Hi everybody, I'm going to talk about Lyme disease, my experience with Lyme disease and how I treated it. Basically, Lyme disease is it's a bacterial disease, and what it is essentially is there's a bacteria that's invading your body, and it's eating the connective tissue of your joints as well as your brain. So it's a really devastating disease that destroys people's lives and sometimes kills people when it gets to the point where it's chronic. Now, when I was a young child, I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, according to my parents, I got Lyme disease, and I was treated with antibiotics, and it basically went away. Now, sometimes it goes away completely after antibiotics. Other times it goes away somewhat and then just comes right back, especially a lot of adults that get it. The antibiotics work temporarily, and then it just keeps coming back over and over and over again. So the antibiotics didn't really do much. And then it turns into chronic Lyme disease. Now, in my case, fortunately, it went away when I was 5, and as far as I know, it never came back. However, unfortunately, I live in Ecuador now, and in July 2019, I was visiting my parents in Connecticut in the northeast U.S., and I was bitten by a tick which was carrying Lyme disease, and I didn't know this at the time, and I had forgotten that you have to check yourself for ticks every day when you're working in those areas. I was doing some brush work in the yard. I had forgotten because I hadn't lived there so long, and there's no ticks in Ecuador, so I never have to check myself for ticks. Somehow I forgot, and I noticed a tick bite on my arm, and I thought it was a spider bite. I think I even have a YouTube video where I'm describing it as a spider bite, but it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, and then it developed into chronic Lyme disease, and then basically destroyed my life for the next year and a half. Lyme disease was created in the 1970s by the United States government. A lot of people don't know this. There are books about it. The scientists who worked at the laboratory developing the weaponized ticks admit to this. It's not a conspiracy theory. It actually happened. It's generally accepted. Now, there is an animal disease research laboratory off the coast of Lyme, Connecticut, which is actually maybe half an hour from where I live. It was on an island off the coast of Lyme, Connecticut. And their stated purpose was to research animal diseases to figure out how to treat them, but the lead scientist at the lab later admitted that their main goal was actually to weaponize these diseases and use them as biological weapons. So they would take ticks and try to put as many... Now, I guess Lyme disease supposedly existed before that, but it was just Borrelia, just one bacteria, and it wasn't nearly as bad. Supposedly, scientists were able to weaponize these ticks by putting a whole bunch of other bacterial diseases. They tried to put as many bacterial diseases in these ticks as they could, and then they would have them bite mammals and then study how they were affected. Of course, some of these mammals ended up escaping from the lab, and next thing you know, there's an epidemic of Lyme disease starting in Lyme, Connecticut, and then spreading throughout the Northeast and other parts of the U.S. So it's pretty nasty. Okay, so after I realized it was Lyme disease, because my friend saw picture of it online, and he was like, dude, that looks like Lyme. And I was like, what? Fuck. And then I realized, yeah, it was getting worse and worse. I started getting horrible pain in my shoulder, and it got to the point where, at least for around 1 or 2 months, I couldn't move my right arm at all. My right arm was just totally motionless. If I tried to raise it just a little bit, it would be excruciating pain. And sleeping was very difficult. In the nighttime, I would wake up, when I was having a flare-up, I would wake up in the middle of the night at like 2 or 3 a.m. with excruciating pain, and I couldn't get back to sleep for a few hours. And yeah, so around this point I started to realize it was chronic Lyme disease. It had set in. And the best natural cure I could find at the time was the Samsara tick recovery formula in combination with the Samsara biofilm herbal formula. Both of those together are very important. If you just use the tick formula, it's not going to be as effective as if you use it with the biofilm formula. And the Lyme disease, the Borrelia bacteria, they're spirochetes, they're spiral-shaped bacteria that are really good at digging really, really deep into your tissue, where herbs and medicines that you take often don't even get that far into your tissue when they're in your bloodstream. So the biofilm formula is very important for that. One thing I also was lucky on, it didn't really affect my brain that much, but there were times when I wasn't taking the herbs, and yeah, I could feel it getting worse, and if I took the tick formula, the Samsara tick recovery formula, without taking the biofilm formula, I could feel the Lyme starting to affect my brain. I would start to get more irritable and have a lot less energy and stuff like that. In general, I was going through periods of being kind of more or less okay, to having horrible joint inflammation, and sometimes being basically in bed for 1, 2, 3 days, not really being able to do anything. And this was very difficult because I always had to do stuff at Fruithaven. I work pretty much all day on most days, and a lot of my work was also walking around in the jungle to mark out lots and do surveying and see projects, and I couldn't really do that. I couldn't really do much walking, which was hard for me because I spent a lot of my teenage years doing ridiculous amounts of backpacking and hiking, and my knees had never had any problems. But all of a sudden, yeah, this joint pain that started in my shoulder started spreading throughout my body. So it would be in my right knee for a week, and it would be in my left knee, it would be in my other shoulder, it would be in my hips. My immune system seemed to be pretty smart. It would only let it concentrate in one joint at a time. So I never got to the point where I couldn't move both legs or I couldn't move both arms. It was always one or the other. But it was really, really bad. And one thing that was really important for people to have Lyme disease is to avoid alcohol like the plague. You might be a person who you have like 1 cup of wine or 1 beer and it doesn't really even affect you at all and it's like nothing. With Lyme disease, you realize very quickly how destructive alcohol is to your immune system. So you might have like 1 drink and then you just have a horrible flare-up that's starting the day after that. So when you have the flare-ups, the excruciating joint pain that lasts for days and you can't move your joint or walk or whatever, joint care is important too, because you can put, for example, when I was my right knee, I couldn't move it at all and I couldn't really walk, and that was a very common flare-up that happened a lot. What I would do is I would put a cayenne rub along with some DMSO on that joint before I slept at night, and then I would wrap it in plastic wrap to keep it on there, because it was this nasty, oily rub, that would get everywhere. Wrap that in plastic wrap to compress it a little bit, and then wrap that in ace bandage so it wouldn't move much, and then I would go to sleep. And that helped quite a bit, but I would still have really bad pain in the late night, early morning. Now, something I wish I had discovered early on in having Lyme disease is MMS, because MMS was really the miracle for me. Without MMS, I think I would still be having constant flare-ups and a lot of problems now. The herbs helped, and they made the flare-ups happen a lot less, and they made them go away a little bit quicker and not quite as bad, but I still had to do taking the herbs a lot and the dedicated joint care and still just dealing with a lot of crap. However, the MMS, which is magical mineral solution, it's basically chlorine dioxide. The MMS is kind of functions as an antibiotic. Super, super, super effective. When I finally remembered, the annoying thing is I actually had some MMS most of that time. My friend had given me some to try out, and I just never tried it. I didn't even know that it would be good for that. I totally forgot I had it. I would have made my life much better during that time if I had tried it much earlier. But anyways, finally, I tried the MMS, and I would start to have a flare-up, and I would start to do the MMS Protocol 1000, which is like 1 drop of activated MMS per hour for all the waking hours of the day for a couple of days. I would start to do that, and then a day later, the flare-up would basically be gone. Whereas normally it would be 10 days of excruciating pain and not being able to move the joint at all. And within some time of taking the MMS, whenever I got a flare-up, I would just not have flare-ups anymore. Or when I did, it would be very mild and it would go away. So MMS was really a game changer. Anyone who has chronic Lyme disease, or most other chronic diseases for that matter, should really give MMS a try, because for me, I could say it basically, Lyme disease almost never goes away completely. But for me, with the MMS, having MMS on hand, I know that Lyme disease isn't going to be a problem for me anymore. Just recently, I kind of had a milestone. I did like 3 hours of really heavy, hard hiking in the jungle the other day. And normally I would at least get some knee pain the next day, and it wouldn't develop into a full-blown flare-up because right away I would take MMS. But this time, no knee pain the next day. And yeah, I did take 6 drops of MMS the night after and the morning after, and if I hadn't done that, I may have gotten a flare-up. But the MMS is kind of protective, because of course, when you do a lot of exercise and you have Lyme disease, you are actually, obviously, anytime you exercise, you're damaging muscle tissue, and your body ideally rebuilds it stronger each time. But the Lyme bacteria sees that destroyed tissue and just goes and starts consuming it and inflaming it. And you have a situation where it's just eating away the cartilage. It eats your cartilage, so you have 2 bones grinding together and excruciatingly painful, to give you an idea. So basically, in summary, if you have Lyme disease, if it's gotten to the chronic point, you can try those tick herbs. They're expensive, though. If you don't have enough money, if you want to get just one thing, just get the MMS, because it's cheap. 1 bottle lasts forever. Very, very effective. There's also a disease I'm not allowed to talk about on YouTube because they'll delete my channel. I already have 2 strikes. But there was a Bolivian study where they treated this fake disease that I'm not really talking about with MMS, and it showed it to be very effective. It was a well-designed study. I read the study. But it goes against CDC guidance, so I'm not allowed to talk about that give any specifics on my YouTube channel. They will delete this video and my entire channel. I lose all my videos and all 1,000 subscribers. So I can't talk about that. I can only talk about how effective MMS was for me for treating Lyme disease. And you can read online many accounts of people curing it with MMS, which, by the way, is not bleach. So anyone who says it's bleach is just stupid and retarded. And you should block them on Facebook. Alright, that's all I have to share. That was my experience with getting Lyme disease, suffering horribly from Lyme disease, making my life debilitating, disabling me, and then basically curing it with the magic mineral solution, aka chlorine dioxide. Have a great day, folks. A message from our sponsors. Go to AmazonFruitFestival.com. Come to the Amazon Fruit Festival January 17 and 23, 2022. This coming January, we have a guaranteed refund for people who run into problems with travel due to random arbitrary restrictions being placed on their travel. Guaranteed refund. No other fruit festival in the world has that. Buy your tickets now. Use the promo code Plant a Fruit Tree to get $50 off your ticket. We have camping tickets and cabin tickets. Cabin tickets run out fast, so buy your tickets now. Come to the Amazon Fruit Festival in Ecuador. Check out Terra Fruitis and Fruit Haven and the other lands we have for sale in the area. Yeah.